Hi everyone, we're going to be doing Chapter 11, Section 3, which is going to be Simplifying Rational Expressions. There are 3 steps involved when you're simplifying rational expressions, and the first step is to factor the numerator and factor the denominator. After you've factored the numerator and denominator, you then are going to express each common factor pair in the numerator and the denominator as 1. And then the last step, the third step, is you're going to simplify and state any restrictions on the variable. So I have a chart next to show you what this means, and then we're going to do a few examples. So in this chart, this is what we call a common factors chart, and it says here, be sure that only common factors are eliminated when you simplify. Below are examples of common factors. Now, something to think about when you're looking at common factors, notice for the first expression given, you have x parenthesis x plus 3 and parenthesis all over 2x. You can factor out an x to this. There's an x here and an x down here, so you can factor out an x. But like the second example, parenthesis x plus 4 and parenthesis over x, you can't factor out, even though there's an x here, you can't factor it out because this x in the parentheses goes with the x plus 4. It's not an x by itself. If I had an x outside of the parentheses, then I could factor them out, but I can't do that since I don't have an x outside of the parentheses. So just something to make note of. So with that being said, the first expression, I'm able to factor out an x in this because of the x up at the top, and we have 2 x's down at the bottom. So we factor out an x, and when we simplify that for the top, factor out, those x's become a 1 because x over x equals 1. So first step, we factored out a 1. Second step, we found what equals 1 given the numerator and denominator. X over x gives me 1. In my third step, simplifying the rational expression, is x plus 3 over 2. My second expression, we have x plus 4 over x. Again, as I mentioned just a minute ago, that x is connected with the 4 in the parentheses, so I can't factor out an x. So there's going to be no common factor for this expression, and it cannot be simplified further. So this would be your final answer, given that you can't factor out anything in common. Looking at the next expression, we have 2x in the parentheses, x plus 1, all over 4x squared. We have a 2x for the numerator and a 4x squared as the denominator. So 2x is going to be my common factor between my numerator and denominator. So if I take out my 2x here and I simplify this to become I can take out 2x here, and then I'd be left with a 2x left. So my simplified version is going to be the top, x plus 1 over 2x. The next one here, we have 2x squared plus 3 over x. This 2x squared goes with the plus 3, so we're not going to be able to find a common factor. So that rational expression cannot be simplified any further. Let's go through some examples now, so this makes a little bit more sense to you. Okay, looking at my examples here, they want us to simplify this, and there was a little type error here. This needs to be a 10, not 1, so it's 5a plus 10 all over 5a. Remember, the first step to do this is we need to find something that we can factor out for the numerator and the denominator. Well, 5 goes into 5, but 5 also goes into 10. So we can factor out a 5 in the numerator. So we have 5, then parenthesis, a plus, what's 10 divided by 5? If we factor that out, it's 2 all over my denominator, 5a. Now that we've found a common factor, can we set this up to find the numerator and denominator equal to 1? We can, because notice we have 5 outside the parentheses and we have 5a here. If we set this up as 5 over 5 times my parenthesis a plus 2 all over my a, 5 over 5 becomes 1, so then I'm left with my a plus 2 over a, and this is the answer. This is my simplified rational expression for example a. And so we're done with that problem. Let's look at B. Let's see if we can find a common factor for the numerator, find a common factor for the denominator. Well, for the numerator, my common factor is going to be 3 because 3 goes into 3. 3 also goes into 6. So if I pull out a 3, I'm going to have 3 outside the parenthesis, then I'm left with x minus what's 6 divided by 3, that's going to give me 2. So that's my numerator factored out. My denominator we factored out based on our polynomial here. So we set it up with my 2 sets of parentheses. X squared gives me x and x. And then I have to think of what 2 factors multiplied are going to give me negative 6, but then would add to give me a plus 1. Well, that's going to be 3, positive 3, and a negative 2. So when I factor out the denominator here, I'm going to have x plus 3, x minus 2. So now, let me actually, I don't need to rewrite anything. Do you see anything in common with the numerator and the denominator where it can become equal to 1? Well, notice you have x minus 2 for the numerator and the denominator. When you divide that, that would become a 1. That x minus 2 over x minus 2. So when I set this up as the simplified rational expression, I'm going to be left with this 3 over x plus 3. So 3 divided by x plus 3. This is my simplified rational expression, and that is my final answer for B right there. All right, let's look at C. C is a little different here in the fact that we have at the denominator 16 minus x squared. So this is a minus x squared. I'm going to put a 1 in front here because that's going to help me later on when I'm factoring out my denominator. Let's first look and see if we can factor out anything with my numerator, my top values. Well, let's set it up with my 2 parentheses. X squared is going to give me x and x. Then I think of 2 factors that gives me negative 20 that are multiplied that give me negative 20 but add to give me x. That is going to be 5 and negative 4. So when I factor out the numerator, it's going to be x plus 5, x minus 4. So that's my numerator factored out. But let's look at my denominator. I have 16 minus 1x squared. I'm going to factor out a negative 1. Why am I going to factor out a negative 1? Because we don't want to have a negative x squared. So if I factor out a negative 1, what it's going to leave me left is x squared by itself, and then negative 1 times 16 gives me a negative 16. And this is going to be a little bit easier to factor out here. So with my denominator, I have negative 1, and then when I factor out x squared minus 16, again I got my negative 16 by taking my factored out negative 1 times my original 16 to get negative 16. So I'm going to get x minus 4, x plus 4 when I factor that out. So I know it's a little, there's a lot going on right here. So let me erase and show you after I've done factoring all this out how we can simplify this. Okay, so factored out the numerator is x plus 5, x minus 4. For the denominator, I have -1, I have x plus 4, and x minus 4. Do you see anywhere on the numerator and the denominator where they would divide to become 1? Yes, where we have this x minus 4. X minus 4 over x minus 4 becomes 1. Those become 1. So my simplified version, my answer is going to be x plus 5 as my numerator over -1 times x plus 4. And this will be my final answer for example C. All right, so those are the type of examples that you're going to see in your homework, your bookwork. You do have some bookwork that is due Thursday along with the notes that you take in class. We will review and go over questions you have before you take your quiz. But your bookwork is page 542, number 16 through 25 all.